This is a Dark Illumination Report Extra with RJ Womack.
Hey everybody, RJ Womack here, aka Brother Nero. This is, of course, the Dark Illumination Report podcast, the show where we put the emphasis on the religious worship of Satan and demons instead of the individual, and also where we try to help our fellow Satanists get advice that will help them improve their life. Now, for those of you who don't know why I keep repeating this on every episode, according to the professional podcasters, it's a good idea to kind of give a little slug at the beginning of every episode to let new listeners know what the podcast is about, because you never know what episode they're going to find, and you never know where they're going to find it at or how long it's going to be before they listen to it, you know, how many years have gone by or whatever. So they always tell you to identify a general purpose for your podcast, you know, what it's all about, sort of thing. So those of you who wonder why I do that, that's why, because the professionals say that's what you're supposed to do. Today we're going to have a good show. I think we're going to have a show you're really going to like, because, man, I got a large response from you guys from this last podcast. You guys responded and engaged in ways that I don't think I've ever had before. I've got so many questions. I'm going to dedicate this whole episode to answering questions and stuff, and I'm really happy that y'all responded. I'm really happy to know that there are religious Satanists out there that still want to be a part of this religion, that still want to be actively involved and would like to see a religious group start. It gives me hope for the future of Satanism. Now, if I can just convince people to raise their children to be little Satanists so we can have baby Satanists for the future, and convince young women that, you know, it's important to have children and raise them to be Satanists, and it's not a bad thing, and it doesn't make you a cult member just because you want your children to carry on your traditions, and you want your children to actually believe in what you believe in, and you want them to grow up and share that belief with future generations. It doesn't make you a cult leader. But anyway, I'll talk about that in a minute. But so I have a lot of questions, but before that, I have a lot of announcements as well. First of all, I'd like to ask y'all to do me a favor, and just to create this sense of community, if you would, please, if you're listening to this show in a different country, send me a selfie and tell me where you live and a little bit about yourself and where you heard about the show, so I can share it on my Twitter account and on my website and the Facebook page, so that people can see that there's other people like them. That is, if you don't mind doing a selfie, please do so, because I'd like to know who my audience is and kind of get an idea for where you're at and how you came to Satanism. And I'd really appreciate that. And I think that would be a good way to start the community off. Secondly, I'd like to ask you if you would be interested in buying a t-shirt or a mug with the Dark Illumination Report podcast logo. Now, I'm not going to jump in and just sell this stuff to you. I'm going to ask you if you're interested, if it's something you would be interested in. And I'm going to use the funds from those t-shirts and those mugs to start funding a bank account for a new ministry that I'm going to start. I'm going to start a legal ministry for Satanists, and I'm going to start that probably in July or so. I'm going to start it as an LLC, and the reason I'm starting it as a legal for-profit business is because it's just too hard to start a nonprofit. It takes about 2.5 years sometimes to get nonprofit status from the IRS. I just wanted to let you know that I'm very, very serious about doing stuff and being actively involved and trying to get people to actually live this shit and live the principles they claim to believe in. And I'm tired of us being an online religion. I'm tired of us being, you know, talking about all of the things we're going to do for Satan and all the things we want to do for Satan. And I want to encourage people to get involved and to get active and to create that community and that network. So I'm kind of going to start the ball rolling by creating a ministry. Now, I don't know if any of you guys are going to respond to this or you're going to support it, or so it may flop and it may blow up in my face, which many of the things that I do often do blow up in my face because I expect people to support it and they don't. So if it blows up in my face, oh well. I mean, I'm doing what I promised Satan I would do, and hopefully you guys will support what I do, and you think I'm sincere enough that you'll give me a chance to prove to you that I'm the real deal, that I'm not one of these, you know, people out here just trying to, you know, make money just for the sake of making money. And I'm not out here trying to put on a show to get attention, that I really believe in what I'm telling you. And my way of putting myself out there is to say, I'm going to start this ministry. And let me tell you a little bit about what I've got planned. I want this ministry to be something that is set up to help Satanists in some way, where we decide to take on a charitable campaign or some kind of activity where we support our fellow religious Satanists, so we build that community. And there was one idea I had for this ministry, but as it turns out, what I had in mind is not going to be possible to do. I wanted to do it by October, and I'm not going to tell you what it was because I don't want to reveal anything until it actually happens. But basically, I wanted to do something for some certain religious Satanists. And as it turns out, you have to go through a bunch of red tape to be able to do it. And it takes about maybe 2 or 3 years to get through the red tape, apparently, from what I've been told. I don't know if that's true. But anyway, the idea is that I'd like to do that at some point in the future, and I will be working on that. But in the meantime, I'd like to find some charitable activity that we can do to support our fellow Satanists online, so that people, no matter where they're at, they can get involved. And I'd like to ask you guys to give me some ideas of what we can do, some kind of charitable activity we can do, or some kind of function we can get involved with, raise money for, or raise awareness for, that has to do with religious Satanism, so we can start getting actively involved as a community, even though it might be online. And I want you guys to pick it out, because then you'll know that you chose it. You chose what we could do, and we can all work together and start building that network and that community. And let me just be honest here, guys. If I can get enough people interested, if I can get enough people that show they care about this, I'm willing to start a satanic group again. I'm willing to start a religious order, a religious satanic order, but only if I find people that really want to do it. One of the things that's happened in the past is that, people say they want to be a part of a satanic group, but honestly, they only want to be a part of a satanic group if it gets them sex or money, or if they can get drunk and have a party. They don't want to do religious work. They don't want to do satanic work. They just want to party, and they want to hope to get laid, and that's about it. But if you really want to start a religious order, you need people that are willing to do administrative stuff. You need people that are willing to file payroll taxes. You need people that are willing to do quarterly taxes and state taxes and do all the IRS filings and stuff like that, do administrative work, be on boards of directors and things like that. And if you can't find serious people that are willing to do that, then you can't start an organization. And in the past, that's what's happened. I've had people commit to me that they would help me to run an organization, help me to have a functioning organization, and they just fall through. It'll just fall through. It never works, because the people just don't have the self-discipline to run a business. I mean, in all reality, a high priest of an organization and a high priestess are a corporate CEO if it's a legal church, right? And that's what it is. And that's part of the job, along with all the religious stuff. And then you have to have a secretary. You have to have a treasurer. You have to have a bank account with at least 3 signatures on it so that nobody steals the money. And you have to file reports to show the members where the money went. This is what you do if you're starting a real church or a real religious organization or a real temple. And most theistic Satanists are not willing to do that. And that's why the Satanic Temple has been successful, because they have people that are professional, that know how to run a business, that know how to do public relations, that know how to use the legal system to get their voice heard. And we are not going to succeed until somebody steps up and does that. Now, I can't just jump in with anybody and have them help me start an organization. I have to get to know them. I have to know that they're sincere and that they're professional and that they mean what they say, and they're not going to cheat people, and they're not going to steal from people, and they're not going to steal from you and misuse your money and stuff. So, because I've had really bad experiences with that. I've had really bad experiences. And one of those experiences really went terribly wrong. And I don't want to see that happen again. I want to be able to prove to people that what we say we're going to do, we're going to do. I mean, I don't want people to think that this is some kind of gimmick. So I need the help. Okay. But for now, that's in the future. And I'm not even saying that that's anytime soon. Right now, I just want to pick a charitable thing we can do for a fellow Satanist, raise the money or raise the awareness, whatever it is we decide to do, and then do it. So that way we can start building that community and we can start doing things that matter, okay? That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I have a new phone number for the podcast, and it's also going to act as the ministry phone number. But for now, it's going to act as the podcast phone number. And most of the time it will be a voicemail, and you can leave your questions if you choose to. But once a month, I will make myself available for an hour, and I will tell you the time, and I will take phone calls and I will record them for the podcast where we'll have a conversation. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do live broadcasting of the phone calls without changing my podcast host, and I don't want to do that. So they're going to have to be pre-recorded. Plus, that prevents me from getting trolls, because I can just delete the conversation or delete their phone call or delete their messages. So I don't have to deal with trolls and idiots and Church of Satan members. The same thing, idiots and Church of Satan members is kind of the same thing. Anyway, that was the other thing. And the phone number is area code 361-232-5772. That's 361-232-5772. And like I said, once a month, I will make myself available for an hour. I will limit the phone calls to about 5 to 7 minutes, because we do need to make them short enough that I can put them on the podcast. And once we start getting the phone calls and stuff, then I'll start putting them on the podcast. I've had phone numbers before with SpeakPipe. I've had ways that people could call me and leave voicemails for the podcast. And have gotten some phone calls, but most of them were personal questions, and they weren't really, I didn't feel like they were suitable for the podcast to put on the podcast. And a lot of them were trolls and stuff, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of trolls. So, I mean, but the main thing I want you to know is that I'm really going to try to do this for real, and I really do want to help you, and I genuinely want to minister to my fellow brothers and sisters, and I mean it from my heart. And I want to explain to you why I'm doing this, and I know this is kind of going on. This is going to be a long episode, but a couple of weeks ago, I just got the overwhelming feeling, or probably a couple of months ago, I should say probably about 6 months ago, actually, I got the overwhelming feeling that I needed to get more involved. I needed to start communicating with people, and I needed to let them know that they were being heard and that they were appreciated, and that there were real people out here that believed in Satan. And I just kept getting the message that I needed to minister, that I need to be a real minister, and I need to stop worrying about, what everybody thinks or whether anybody supports you. If I just went out there and was genuine about it, hopefully people would support this podcast. And that's what I'm doing. And because over the years, I've gotten sidetracked by drama, like we all do. I've gotten in relationships and stuff, and got sidetracked by relationships and stuff, and got lost focus on Satanism and doing what I promised Satan I would do in a lot of ways, simply because I got sidetracked by life. So I wanted to make it right with Satan, and I wanted to do everything that I promised him I would do, and that's what this podcast is about, and that's what this ministry is about. Will it sell more books by me doing this podcast every week? Sure it will. Will I make a little bit more money in royalties? Sure it will. By making myself more publicly aware, available, will it cause me to sell more books? Sure it will. I'm going to be totally transparent with you, but that's not why I'm doing it. And along those lines, I want to say something about my book sales. I want you to know that my book is cheaper than almost anybody else's book that's the same size. It's $10.95. And the reason it was $10.95 is because I made it cheaper because I wanted the message to get out there. I wanted I wanted people to have it available to them. So I don't get much royalties from that book. And there are people that get a lot more royalties than me. I can tell you that, because the average Satanism book is about $14.95 for a book that size, or a little bit bigger. So I'm getting a lot less. And that price has been that way for 10 years. And the other thing about me is I don't want to encourage people to pirate my books, but I'm not going to go after people that do, because to me, it's more important that the message get out there than it is about trying to find people and trying to get them to cease and desist from putting out my book. Now, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to try to encourage that, because the more money I can make, the more things I can do like this, like the ministry, and pay for websites and do other things and pay for future books and things. But I'm still not going to go after my fellow Satanists, because the message is more important. So please, if you have pirated my books before, if you support my message and you believe in what I do, go out and buy a copy, please. But the main thing is, I didn't feel that I was doing right by Satan, keeping the promises. And so that's what this podcast is about, trying to make sure I do my job and keep my promise. And one of the things that I promised Satan I would do is, when I was younger, when I was about 14, I said to Satan, I said, I feel that you should get the attention that the Christian God gets, the same level of attention. And I feel like you should be treated like the true God, the supreme God. And what I was referring to at age 14 when I made this promise to Dad was I said to him, I said, it's not fair that these Protestants go out here and preach this message 3 hours a week, and they do 3 hours worth of sermons a week, and you get no attention and you get no respect, right? And so I said, I want to make it right, and I want to make it up to you, Satan. I said, I want to preach at least 3 hours a week on your behalf. I want to do things. I want to do 3 hours of religious work on your behalf and get your message out there. And until this very day, I haven't fulfilled that promise. And I've always wanted to get this podcast up to 3 hours a week, but the reason I don't is because, just to be honest, I'm a little bit lazy. And also, I don't want y'all to get sick of me. So I don't know if y'all want to hear 3 hours of Brother Nero. So, but even so, I really would like to get the podcast up to that level, just because I made the promise to Dad, and I want to fulfill it. That's what I call Satan, by the way, Dad. That's what I actually call him. And I've always called him that for years and years. But, and sometimes I slip into that instead of calling him Satan, but that's just what I call him. But anyway, so I felt like I had let him down, and I will explain a little bit to you about that kind of stuff too. One of the things that I was trying to explain to everybody is that the Satanic Temple kind of annoys me on a different level and on a personal level, because many of the things they've done are ideas that I had 25 years earlier. And somebody asked me a question about HOME, HOME, which is stands for Horned Orders Magical Existence. It's a group that I founded not long after I got out of high school at about age 20. And we never really had that many members. We had just a handful, and they would change and switch out all the time. So we never really got off the ground. We never really got a good membership. And part of that was because I was 20 years old. I was cocky. I thought I knew everything. And I did all of the things that I tell you about. And don't be arrogant. I was arrogant. Don't think you're the shit and think know everything. And I did exactly that. So all of the things I'm telling you are things that I've done myself. So when I say these things, people go, well, Nero's bitching again. He's complaining about Satanists. He's criticizing everybody. I'm not criticizing, like I said to you before in the other episodes. I'm telling you because I've been where you're at. I've done everything you've done, probably, and more. When I get mad at these black metal kids, when they start acting like I'm so dark and so hard and all that stuff, the reason that I do that is because I was that person. I acted that way. I acted like I was the shit when I didn't know fuck all, right? So I've been there, and I've messed up groups because I was an arrogant fuck, okay? And I told you I would be real with you guys on this show, and I mean every word of it. And then the other thing is people were not mature enough, because I surrounded myself with people that were just as childish and arrogant as I was. And I would tell them about, we need to figure out ways to afford a lawyer. We need to do PR. We need to do activities to get people's attention for theistic Satanism. I even had the idea for the coloring book 25 years before the Satanic Temple ever came out with the coloring book. So when I saw that, I was kind of fuming, because I was like, damn, I had that idea. And when I had that idea, nobody would listen to me. They thought I was nuts. And they said, oh, that'll never work. Nobody will ever do that. That will, Satanism's supposed to be anti-commercialism, anti-capitalism, all this crap, because they were black metal kids. And it's like, dude, now I look back and I say I was right and they were wrong. And the other thing is that I would tell them we need to, learn about business. We need to learn about making money and entrepreneurship. And that's exactly what the Satanic Temple has done. They've presented themselves in a very professional way. They use professional PR tactics. They use lawyers, and they raised money. That's what they did. And of course, I wouldn't have been mature enough or knew enough to do that, but I thought I would be able to do it. But still, the fact is I had the ideas, but the problem was I had idiots around me that were just as stupid as I was. And the problem is that when you do this stuff, again, as I said earlier in the podcast, you really have to have people around you that know business, that know how to run a professional organization. And what people expect Satanism to be is they get in love with this, or they get infatuated with this idea that it's going to be orgies and girls and eyes wide shut and crap like that. And in reality, it's really not like that. The reality is what you're dealing with usually is people fighting, all kinds of drama, people worried about their girlfriends getting with this guy or that guy or this girl or whatever, and you're just trying to keep the fucking ship afloat. You're just trying to keep the group focused on Satanism. To give you an example of the kind of stuff that would happen, just so you have an idea, and that's how come I always tell you can always tell these people on Facebook have never run a group offline. They've never associated with a real satanic group. They've never been real priesthood, because they don't know the first thing about what really goes on. I'll give you an example of a group that I was involved in, that I wasn't the leader of, but I was part of the leadership hierarchy. I was part of the priesthood in this group. One night we're sitting there and we're just casually at home and we're just doing normal stuff. And we get a knock on the door. And we get a knock on the door, and it's one of our members, and he comes in, he goes, guys, I was strapped to a chair, and the guy held me by knife point, and he says that, LaVey is the only real Satanist, and the Satanic Bible is the only real satanic philosophy. And he had our members strapped to a fucking chair and holding him a knife to his throat, and he said, he's about to come over here and look for you guys. And me and the other members of the hierarchy are going, oh shit, right? And what turned out happening was that we had to call the cops. We had to have investigators come and deal with this guy, because he was coming to attack us. That's what real priesthood is like. Stuff like that happens, okay? So when I tell you to be careful, when I tell you to watch out who you trust, watch out who you listen to. There are crazy people out there. You got to believe me that I have some experience that you don't. And that's just one story among many I could tell you from other satanic groups and from other things I've seen. Okay, so I'm not talking bullshit here, guys. I'm not your average fucking kid that just got into this a year ago. I see all the time these people that go, I'm a beginning Satanist, Brother Nero, and can you help me and give me advice? And then 3 weeks later, you'll see them calling themselves Reverend so-and-so or High Priest so-and-so or Minister so-and-so. And it's like they didn't even know the name of some of the demons, much less know anything about Satanism. And the next thing you know, they're fucking calling themselves Reverend. And they have a coven on Facebook. And so that's why I get annoyed, because this is all a fucking joke, most of it, okay? So anyway, didn't mean to ramble on there, but I'm just trying to tell you that there's all kinds of stories I could tell you, man, about the real shit that goes on. And it's not being a priest or priestess of Satan is not an easy job. You're just trying to keep the ship afloat. You're just trying to keep people from killing each other half the time and trying to remind people that it's about Satan, not about them. And you're dealing with relationship problems. You're dealing with all kinds of issues that you wouldn't believe. And there's a lot less orgies and a lot less slutty girls or a lot less slutty guys than you think. And that's the other thing I got to say about, as long as we're on the subject of slutty, a lot of people think that especially female Satanists are party girls or they're slutty girls. And there are some, and you'll always find slutty people in both sexes in any group. But most female Satanists are not trashy. They're not slutty. They're not easy. And in fact, if anything, they know that people think that. They know that it's a fetish for some men, and they resent it. So they know what you're after, and they know that it's all about sex for a lot of the guys that come to the Coven. They're well aware of that, and they've already got your number before you even get in there. So if you think that you're just going to get any girl you want to sleep with you just because she's a Satanist and you have some fetish, you'll find out you're really going to be wrong most of the time. So I just want to point that out to you. These Hollywood images of, sleeping with every girl in the group every night, that doesn't happen that often. And it doesn't happen as often as people wish it would, I'm sure, especially the male Satanist. So just keep that in mind. If you go into priesthood, go into it with a spiritual purpose. If you go into leadership in an organization, go into it with the right mindset, serving Satan. And if you get some benefits out of that, whether it's pleasure or money or power or whatever it is, be grateful that you got something, that you achieved something that you wanted. But let me talk about power for a second. I want to emphasize something. A lot of leaders, they get obsessed and they get a big ego and they think, oh, I'm powerful now because I have a coven of like 8 people or whatever it is they have. And what they don't realize is it's not you that has the power. You have no power. The only reason you have power is because you have followers, because you have people that trusted in you, believed in you, had faith in you, and believed that you were a genuine priest, and they followed you. The minute they don't follow you, the minute you don't have a congregation, you have no power. See, it's really the congregation that has power. It's really the people that give you, a platform that have power. It's not you that has power. So when you get egotistical and you start thinking you're above your congregation or above your audience, that's when things are going to get fucked up, because one day they're going to walk away. And when they do, you won't have shit. It's like this show, right? This show's message will only get out there if I have listeners that appreciate it. If I have listeners that like what I have to say and want to forward my message along. It's one of the reasons why I've been trying to make contact with each and every person that listens to this show and respond to the emails and stuff. It's because I know that without you, the listeners, this show doesn't mean anything. Nobody will hear my message. Nobody will get these ideas. Nobody will listen to these teachings. Without you, this show will not grow, and my message will not get out there, and I won't be able to do my job for Satan. So see, it's not me that has the power. It's you. You're the one that makes this show possible by listening, by asking questions, by participating, by retweeting my show, by posting up comments, by reposting it on Facebook. Without you, I'm nothing. My message won't get heard by anyone. And the same thing is true for priesthood. They forget that they're only as strong as their congregation. So don't forget that. Don't treat them like they're the little people, because without them, you're nothing. And it's not supposed to be about them anyway. It's not supposed to be about your power and your ego. It's supposed to be about Satan. And I guarantee you, the worst thing that you can have happen to you is be the leader of the group and have your members go, fuck you, I don't want to be here anymore. It's a terrible, terrible feeling when a group falls apart and you realize that you really didn't have any power at all. It was the people that followed you that had all the power. And that's why I say being a priest or priestess is supposed to be about being a servant. It's supposed to be about serving the people. That's what priesthood means. It means to serve, to be a servant. See, and so when you see people making it all about them and they act like they're a deity, like a king or queen on a throne, and everybody should kneel at their feet, they've got it all wrong, and they're headed for a fall. And when they do fall, it's going to hurt a lot. Because I tell you one thing, all Satanists have major egos. And you think it hurts when you're just an average person when you fall from your throne and your crown breaks? Nothing hurts worse for a Satanist than to realize you aren't shit. I've been kind of rambling on here for a while, so that should be about enough of story time with Brother Nero. I'll tell you some other stories some other time maybe. But anyway, getting to our first question comes from Aaron, and this is a actual phone call. I've got permission from Aaron to use her phone call because I want to encourage all of you to have your voices heard on the podcast so that we can create that sense of community. So please, if you have any questions, call me at the phone number I gave you earlier and leave a message so I can share it with your fellow brothers and sisters. Everybody wants to hear your beautiful, beautiful voice. All right. So here we go with the phone call.
Hey, RJ. My name is Erin. Here's a voice message for you. You mentioned marrying within your religion, but what if you are having a hard time finding those who are your religion? What are your thoughts on dating and marrying those that are just cool with your religion, like genuinely cool with it? Even if they don't agree or believe the same thing. What are your thoughts on that? Because it is very hard to find, as you know, it is very hard to find people who share our beliefs. Obviously, Christians are a no, and the like, Christians and the like. But those who are genuinely cool with it. What are your thoughts on that? Thanks, RJ.
In answer to your question, Aaron, I really think that it's a bad idea to marry outside your religion. In fact, I would advise anyone that's a real serious Satanist never to do it. Nothing good ever comes of it. Either one of two things happens. Either the person doesn't stay loyal to the religion, they choose the relationship over the religion, which is what happens most of the time, or they choose the religion over the relationship. And even if it goes well for a while, it never really lasts. I have a friend that I know that's a Satanist that had a child and was in a relationship with a man, and he's basically destroyed her whole life. He's used her child against her, and he's said that if she tries to get custody of her son and gets her son away from him, which he's a bad guy, that he'll use all of her religious beliefs against her, and he will make her seem as bad as possible. And and it's made her life miserable. It's been going on for years, and she's totally controlled by him because she's afraid of losing her son. She's afraid of what he'll accuse her of. And he was a Satanist, but at the time he was pretending to be a Satanist, I should say. And I told her he wasn't a Satanist, and she didn't believe me, or she didn't want to believe it, or whatever. And ultimately he turned away from the religion, and he basically said it was all bullshit. He didn't believe it. And now he's trying to use her religion against her. So you have to make sure that before you get involved in a relationship that's a permanent relationship, that the person you're involved with is sincere in their religious beliefs, they're dedicated, and if they're a non-believer, they could also turn on you. I've seen that happen too. They could also turn on you and start using your religion against you. So in order to save yourself from all that trouble, don't even start getting involved with someone. If you want to spend time with someone, that's why we need to create networks. That's why we need to create community. That's why we need to create satanic orders where people are about the religion so that people can meet each other. It's much better to take your time. Go find someone to hang out with if you're lonely. Go find someone to be a friend with benefits if if you want to have sex. But don't ruin your life because you're lonely, or don't ruin your life because you're horny. It's ridiculous. Take your time. Find the right person. find whatever partner, whatever is appropriate for you, and wait till you find that person. In the meantime, go find someone to hang out with, go find someone to have sex with, be safe, as long as it's consensual and all that stuff, all those things. But that's the way you do it. And the other thing is, we need to create that community. We need to create satanic groups and stuff so that we have that community, so that when you go out on a date with someone, you'll have your brothers and sisters to back you up if you need help and you're not on your own. And I know that, at least from what my understanding is, from where you're at, there's probably not that many Satanists to hang out with, from what I know of that area. So I understand your situation, but it's better to be safe and take your time and find the right partner for you than to rush into it. It's not worth it, because it can ruin your life. And plus, when children are born to people that don't share the same religion, all that ends up happening is the child ends up with no religion. They usually end up an atheist. They don't end up being loyal to Satan or Satanism, and they don't have that connection with Satan that children sometimes have when they're born from two parents that are dedicated. So just be careful, just take your time, and try to find other people that you can trust, that you trust to give you advice and are able to judge people really well, so that you know when you should watch out, and just trust your instincts. But whatever you do, don't rush into a relationship, because that never ends well. And especially don't get pregnant by someone you don't really know, and someone outside the religion, because it will come back to bite you in the ass. Trust me on this. I mean, I know people will argue with this, but trust me on this. I've seen too many negative things. It's one of those things, just like with the following a person who calls themselves a priest or a priestess. If you're not careful and you don't take the time to really vet them and get to know them, in the end, you'll find out it can be a really bad experience, and it can ruin your life. And the same thing is true if you pick the wrong partner. So please, and I say this to everyone, not just to Aaron, please take your time in choosing the partner for your life. If you're a Satanist, consider whether they're religious, whether they're serious. Don't judge people based on what they say. Judge people based on what they do. Judge them on their actions, not their words. Anyway, thanks, Aaron, for letting me use your voicemail on this podcast. I'm sorry that the website wasn't working for you the way that it should. I'm the one that does the website, and I'm not the greatest website person in the world. Plus, I haven't had a lot of time to work on it. I've kind of been sidetracked by other projects, including trying to finish the book and deciding to start a ministry all of a sudden out of nowhere. One of the things about me is I have 10,000 ideas, and I try to do at least half of those at one time. So I tend to not get anything done. That's one of my downfalls. But anyway, we're going to move on to the next question. And the next question I have is, somebody asked me, do I believe in Cain? There are some people who believe that Cain was the first Satanist, and that's kind of occult lore. And in fact, that's what the song by Danzig, Twist of Cain, is about. A lot of people believe he was the first Satanist, and that he was the person that performed the first Black Mass. That's at least one of the occult mythologies. As to whether I believe in the literal existence of Cain, I can't say. I don't have an opinion either way. But as far as do I believe in the bloodline sort of thing, the generational Satanism, the bloodline of the serpent, the dragon, the witch's fire, as they call it, yes, I do. In fact, in traditional witchcraft, they still refer to it as the witch's fire, the witch's blood, the blood of the dragon, the blood of the serpent, the seed of the serpent, that sort of thing. So yeah, I believe in that. And that's one of the reasons why, I talk about people bringing up their kids and staying within their religion, marrying within the religion and having children, because I believe that when two Satanists that are dedicated at the time of conception and are serious about it have a child, that some of Satan's essence and the connection with his kingdom happens. And then when the child is young, before their mind is conditioned to credit the spiritual, you'll notice little things that they seem to be connected with the spirit world. They seem to be able to sense the spirits and connect with them. And the funny thing is, as they get older and you stop teaching them or you stop exposing them to satanic ideas, they tend to lose that connection. It fades. So it just goes to show that if you expose the children to satanic ideas, that connection with the kingdom gets stronger. Now, I will be honest with you and tell you that I've only known about 2 children that were born to, well, not 2 children, but 2 couples that had children that were born to them while they were practicing Satanist and were conceived while they were practicing Satanist. So I don't have very much evidence to prove what I'm saying. It's just anecdotal at this point. And that's one of the reasons why I wish that I could, one of the reasons I want to start a satanic group is because I'd like to see children born to satanic couples and see how they grow up, so I can see if my theory or what little evidence I have, if it bears out. And I think it will, but you can't do that without seeing how the children grow up and what they become. But yeah, and one of the other things I want to say about this subject is that, it's the women that preserve the traditions of the religion. If you look at any religious tradition, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Judaism, any of the major religions, you'll see that it's the mother that teaches the children the religious traditions. It's the mother that dresses them and takes them to church or synagogue or temple or whatever it is. And it's usually not the father that carries on the tradition with the children. So that's why I feel that young women, childbearing age women, have a very important role to play in theistic Satanism. And I think it's a very sacred duty. And I think, for young women to take it so lightly and to not see it as an important duty really concerns me because, and I know this is a sensitive subject and I know a lot of people have a lot of different opinions, but I want to explain to you why I have this point of view. The reason I have this point of view is because I believe our religion is kind of dying out. And I believe that if we don't change our ways and get back to more traditional approaches to things, meaning marrying within our religion, having children, raising them in Satanism. I say raising them in Satanism. I should say exposing them to Satanism, because you can't be a Satanist unless you have a connection with Satan. And Satan does not allow people to take away people's free will. He does not accept people that have been coerced into Satanism. I don't think people that have been coerced or manipulated into Satanism ever stay in Satanism. It's only through a true calling that you stay in Satanism and that you become a lifelong Satanist. In fact, I'll give you an example. I think 99% of the Satanists you see on the internet are not real Satanists. And I believe within 5 years, you'll see them drift off to Christianity or Thelema or paganism or something else other than Satanism, because they weren't truly called by Satan. And the people that you see that stay in Satanism for their entire life since childhood are people that were called. And I think that even if you expose a child to Satanism, that is not going to make them a Satanist. If they don't receive the call and accept Satan's call of their own free will, it doesn't work. And that's what you need to understand, is that you can't force anybody to be a Satanist. They either are or they're not. And if they come to Satanism and they follow Satan because of their infatuation with a certain group leader, because they're charismatic or because they're attracted to that group leader or whatever, you'll eventually see them drift away from Satanism because the connection isn't genuine. And Satan will not accept someone that does not accept him of their own free will. So that's why it's so important to understand that you can expose your children to Satanism. You can introduce them to Satanism and let them know that there's an alternative way to look at things other than the Christian way, but you can't make them a Satanist. And in fact, I'll tell you something else. And I've said this in other podcasts, but if you're not careful, children will try to act like they're interested in Satanism just to please you, just to please their mother or father, or just to please other people because they think it's important and they see the adults care about it. So you have to be careful and make sure your children are not just showing an interest in Satanism to please you. You got to make sure it's a genuine connection. And the way you do that is when they've been called by Satan, they'll exhibit signs of it. Like, for example, they'll seem to know things that they shouldn't know for their age, or they'll have an interest in magic or tarot cards, and it won't be just to get your attention. It'll be something they do on their own, stuff like that. It's just the way it goes. Let's get on to the next question. A guy asked me on YouTube to give him some idea of what I believe about Satan. First of all, I'm a polytheist, and Satan, Lucifer, is the chief deity of my pantheon. I believe all the other demons serve him, but they're gods in their own right, deserving of respect. I believe Satan and the other demons, gods, whatever you want to call them, whether you call them fallen angels, whether you call them gods, whether you call them demons, they imparted knowledge to mankind, which gave him self-awareness and self-autonomy, right? They gave him the self-awareness that he was an individual. And they gave that knowledge to him. And I believe there's stories throughout all of folklore. There's many stories of a group of gods or a god that rebelled against the other gods to give mankind knowledge and wisdom that the other gods didn't want them to have. Whether you look at the Christian story or whether you look at the story of Prometheus or whatever, there's even some Native American stories that echo these ideas. So I think those stories echo something that actually happened. Now, how it happened or what exactly happened, I don't know. The other thing that's very interesting is that even scientists will acknowledge that mankind was a bunch of hunters and gatherers for a long time. And all of a sudden, they made this sudden leap to farming and building communities. And they don't know how it happened. And what I think happened is that Satan and the other demons had pity on them. And they gave them what we would consider the black flame, or some people would consider the fruit of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil, or whatever. And these things symbolize this change that happened in mankind, that Satan gave them this knowledge or understanding. Now, whether Satan altered our DNA or by some spiritual means he did something to alter our consciousness, it's clear that something happened and we evolved from hunter-gatherers to civilized man, and nobody knows how that happened. And for me personally, I believe it was Satan and the demons that imparted the knowledge that we have. And in fact, many of the ancient occult sciences, the magical sciences, like alchemy evolved into chemistry, and astrology evolved into astronomy, and alchemy also evolved into, herbalism evolved into pharmaceuticals and stuff. So all of these things that we got from Satan eventually evolved into the sciences we have today in some way, or at least they have their origins in the things that Satan gave us, according to my belief system. So as far as what I believe, that's what I believe. I believe if it wasn't for Satan, we would not have the knowledge that we have. We would not have the self-awareness. We would not be able to think for ourselves. We would not be able to question things. So for those reasons, I believe Satan is worthy of worship and respect, and he shouldn't be forgotten. And that's why I find it so insulting whenever people like Lucian Greaves and Peter Gilmore go around talking about Satan doesn't exist. He's just a symbol. We don't worship the devil. Real Satanists don't worship the devil. They're a bunch of idiots. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how much book learning they have. You can be an educated person and still be an ignorant fool. There are many people that have book learning, and there are many people that go to college, and there are many college professors that are not very knowledgeable outside of their subject of specialization. And that's just the truth. Academic education doesn't make you smart about the world around you, and it doesn't make you spiritual. And that's one of the biggest problems I have with a lot of people. And that's one of the reasons why the symbol of this podcast is the symbol that it is the heart. Because the way that you access the spiritual is through the heart. You have to sense the spiritual. You have to open yourself up to it. And sometimes the mind gets in the way and prevents you from opening up to Satan and his kingdom. And you have to let go sometimes of what you think is logical and just go with the experience. And sometimes when you're having a spiritual experience, you're not sure if it's real because you think you're going out of your mind. And that's just the way the spirits work. Sometimes the whole thing kind of messes with you. And there have been many times where people have written to me and said, hey, I had this experience and I've been having these experiences and I'm not sure if I'm really having them or I'm just imagining them. And that sometimes that happens and sometimes it's really, really freaky. But I guarantee you the way you figure that out is if you have consistent spiritual experiences and your friends start seeing things with you, then that's how you know you're not just imagining things. That's how you know it's not just a mental issue. You're not just having psychological problems or something. And when this stuff happens, when it first starts to happen, the spirits will come to you and you'll have experiences and you won't know if it's real or not. Sometimes you'll question your sanity. And then eventually they'll start revealing themselves to people around you and they'll start seeing the things you're seeing and they'll start experiencing the things you're experiencing. And so you'll know it's not just you, you know. And so don't get worried if you feel like you're having experiences you can't explain or you feel a little bit crazy, because sometimes that happens. Sometimes things happen and you almost can't believe it. Your mind can't process what you think you just saw or what you felt or whatever. So don't question it too much at first. If you're having experiences and they don't seem very logical or they don't seem, like there seems to be no evidence, nobody else sees what you're seeing, then you might want to think about going to getting checked out for psychological issues. But don't automatically assume just because you're having some issues that make you feel uncomfortable that you're having some kind of psychological breakdown or something, because the demons are pretty cheeky. They like to have fun and they like to mess with humans sometimes and just kind of fuck with you they're kind of the original trolls, honestly. Sometimes they'll just joke with you and have fun with you and play pranks on you. They have a sense of humor and they like messing with humans and just messing with them a little bit. But most of the time it's just done in fun, kind of like just to mess with you and make you question yourself. So don't feel bad and don't worry about it too much. But anyway, I hope that answered your question about what I believe about Satan. The other thing is, do I believe do I believe in hell? Well, I believe in the Greek concept of hell, the underworld, and I believe there are places of punishment and places of pleasure. And I believe that Satan does have his standards, and I believe that he punishes people according to their deeds, according to his opinion and his judgment, and the way he judges people and what he deems as appropriate is only known to him. So I couldn't say what his basis for punishing people, but since he lets us do a lot of things we want to do, and since he allows us to be free, the way I kind of look at that is you must be doing something pretty bad if Satan feels the need to punish you. And I would suspect that that's in large part due to the fact that you may have done something against his will and disrespected him. And I think a lot of these atheistic Satanists are going to find out very quickly that Satan does in fact exist, and he is not exactly pleased with some of their behavior, some of them. I don't think he cares about a lot of them. I think he takes it in stride, and hey, if they want to be idiots, let them be idiots. But I think some people cross the line, and I think there are going to be consequences for those people. And I think particularly those people that use Satanism to scam people and purposely hurt people, I think they're going to pay a price and they're going to face some kind of punishment. And some people may think this, again, sounds Christian, but you have to understand the idea of the gods punishing people for wrongdoing and the idea of moral codes or the idea of having some kind of morals or standards is not a Christian concept. It's not something that they invented. And a lot of Satanists, in their stupidity and their lack of knowledge and lack of education about religion in general, especially atheist Satanists, are particularly guilty of this. They tend to think that everything that is they perceive as moral is Christian. They think baptism was created by Christianity. They think all kinds of things were created by Christianity that weren't. They don't even understand the concept, a lot of them, of Stoic philosophy or or moral philosophy. They don't understand the idea of Hammurabi's code or anything like that. They think all morality came from Christianity, some of them. I mean, that's how ignorant they are. So, you just have to take it with a grain of salt with some of these people. They don't know what they're talking about. They've never known what they're talking about. They wouldn't know the first thing about Satan if Satan himself came up and pinched them on the ass. So, just you have to take it with a grain of salt. Anyway, that's it, guys. This is getting a little long. I didn't get to all my questions in this episode, but I feel like if I go on much longer, it's just too long. As I said, it's typical for people to only be able to keep their concentration for about 23 minutes. And in most professional speaking classes, they'll tell you to try to limit it to about 23 minutes or at least less than an hour, because after an hour especially, people tend to lose focus and lose interest a little bit. So that'll be it, and I'll continue with questions in the next episode. So there'll be a part 2. I'll see you later. Take care. May Satan be with you. And remember to contact me if you feel the need to. And if you have any questions, make sure to put your selfies up where I can see them, where I can show them to other Satanists, so that we can start building that sense of community. Take care of yourself. May Satan be with you.
Thank you for listening to the Dark Illumination Report podcast. For the latest news headlines, show information, and more, go to rjwomack.com. That's RJWOMACK.